Hey sunshines, and welcome back to my channel. And if you are new here, honey, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. We've been waiting on you. So yes, as you can see from the title of this video, homelessness. Can it be a decision? Let's see. So homelessness as a choice or a decision. Now, most of us know that homelessness normally involves a time in a person's lives where, they're down on their luck. They may have lost a job, may have lost family members, may have gone into a deep depression. We know a lot of military people come back from war with postpartum depression. There are many reasons that can lead to one becoming homeless, but homelessness as a choice, yes. And unfortunately, it did hit my family. And that family member that it hit was my father. Yes, my father. My father decided later on in life that he wanted to become homeless by choice. Yes, by choice. So, just to give you a little bit of background on my father. My father was the eldest child of 9 kids. My grandmother had him, if I'm not mistaken, I believe she was either 15 or 16 when she gave birth to my father. To my understanding, my grandfather was older than she was. I believe that he was of legal age. It was told to me by my grandmother that her aunt actually gave her permission to marry my grandfather. Now, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, was biracial. She had a African American, black, colored woman as a mother, and her father was a Chinese man. So back in those days, biracial relationships was definitely not something accepted, let alone the children. Okay, so moving forward, like I said, my grandmother married my grandfather. With them, they had 7 children, my father being the oldest of them. And later on in life, she had 2 other children, my aunt, who is 4 years older than me, and an uncle who I believe is either 5 to 7 years, I'm not exactly sure, older than me. Growing up, my father was always made to be the caregiver of his siblings. And it was told by my father that, whenever his siblings would do anything that they weren't supposed to do, my grandfather would hold him responsible and he would be disciplined for that. So, he was, I guess, looked at as another parent for my aunts and my uncles growing up. Fast forwarding, once my father and my aunts and uncles became adults, it was still ingrained to them from my grandmother that you always be there for your siblings. So my father has an older child, my brother, by I believe it was his high school sweetheart. 4 years later, he meets my mother and have me. 2 years after that, my mother and my father had my brother. So I have 2 brothers, a half brother, which I don't like using the half, like I said, who's 4 years my senior, and I have a younger brother who's 2 years my junior. And if for my father, I'm the middle child and the only girl. And for my mother, I'm the oldest child and the only girl. So growing up, my father was not in my life as much. I remember him being in my life up until I was about 5 or 6. I remember going to either kindergarten or first grade when my parents separated. I did not see my father again until I was probably about 15 years old, I believe it was. Um, Not really sure how we got back in contact with him, but at that time, I found out that my aunt and her children were living with him, and he was helping her to raise her children because she and my uncle had separated and ultimately divorced. So, once again, my father stepped in to help his sister to raise her children while doing basically nothing for his own biological children, which includes my oldest brother. Okay, fast forwarding many years later, I do not see my father again until I become engaged to be married at the age of 29. Now, how I got back in contact with my father, I believe I had contacted my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, because we did keep in contact with her throughout the years because she and my mother actually developed a friendship over the years. So we were able to keep in contact with my grandmother from time to time. And I believe once I became engaged to be married, I contacted my grandmother so that she could possibly contact my father to let him know that I was getting married. So I do believe that's how I did get back in contact with him at the age of 29 from not seeing him since I was 15. Okay. Met up with my father. At that time, he was living with my grandmother. Now, mind you, one of my other uncles was also there with my grandmother, and my father was helping to take care of him. Now, mind you, these people are 50-ish, maybe close to, yeah, 60, 50-ish or whatever. And my father is still taking care of his siblings. Okay. Anyway, so I get back in contact with my father, and I, let him know I was getting married. If you see any movement, I'm in my rocking chair rocking, so please excuse the movement. I'll try to calm it down, but it's relaxing. What can I say? He wanted to meet my fiance, so my fiance and I went to my grandmother's house so that my father can meet him. And during that visit, my father asked my now husband much of anything. He didn't inquire whether or not this man was financially able to take care of his daughter. How did he treat his daughter? Nothing. My father just said, well, you know what? If she chose you, then you must be a good man. And the whole time I'm thinking, what makes you say that? Because you don't really even know me. But I left that alone. During that visit, I informed my father that he was invited to my wedding, but my mother will be the one walking me down the aisle because my mother has been my one and only parent for the majority of my life, and she was there. That position belonged to her. Yes, mostly the fathers will walk their daughters down the aisle, but I did not have a physical father in my life, so therefore I didn't feel like you was worthy of that position. So I gave it to my mother. I invited him. I invited some aunts and uncles, some cousins. I invited my grandmother. Needless to say, a year later when I got married, well, before that, I did have a engagement party. Um, my grandmother, a few aunts, some cousins, and my father, and an uncle, I believe, two uncles showed up. Okay. A couple of months after that was or maybe a month or so, I don't remember, was my wedding. No one from my father's side of the family showed up to my wedding. The only family member that was not able to come was one of my uncles because he was hospitalized at the time. And that was the only reason why he missed my wedding. This particular uncle has always been self-sufficient as well. He was one of the ones out of my father's siblings that really didn't rely on my father taking care of him as much as the others. Now, he did do for him from time to time, but nowhere near like the rest of my um, father's siblings, with the exception of my younger aunt and I believe my younger uncle. But my father's siblings that were from my grandmother and my grandfather, those were particularly the siblings that my father was held responsible for. Okay, so needless to say, none of them showed up to my wedding. Can't say that I was hurt because I didn't have a relationship with these people anyway. And I guess, just trying to make it family, I decided to invite them. Did I think that they would show up? Yes and no. No, because we're not close. Yes, because maybe they wanted to be nosy. But they proved me mostly right not showing up. Okay. I didn't hear from nobody for the next 10 to 12 years, maybe. So fast forwarding past that, at this point, I'm married now. I have 2 children of my own. And one day coming home from work, I believe it may have been 2011, maybe 2010, 2011, I run into my aunt, the one that's 4 years older than me. And she was telling me at the time that, my father wasn't doing quite that well, that, he was homeless. And, whenever she would talk to him, he would always talk about his children. And now that she's running to me, she wanted to know if she could have my number and give him my number because he did have a cell phone. So I said, yeah, that's fine. So I would say probably a week or so later, my father did call me. We had a conversation. I let him know he has grandkids now. And, that was that. So, I told him that my aunt had mentioned that he was homeless. And I said, what brought about that? Because, even through the years, even not being, a part of my father's life, keeping in contact with my grandmother, I always knew that my father worked. So he basically told me, he said he came to a decision in life that he was tired of people. He said he wasn't suicidal. He didn't want to end his life because he did give his life to Christ. He knew suicide was wrong. And, he would never take his life. However, he just came to the conclusion that he did not want to be around people. I said, really? I said, so that's why we haven't seen you as your children all these years? So he said, basically, no, not really. He said, but, he's had so much on him since a child of raising his siblings that it just became too much. He's like, these brothers and sisters of his are grown now with children of their own, and they still relied on him for everything, even beyond finances, just everything. And he got to the point where he was just tired. So he felt that, if I have nothing, they can't ask for nothing, they can't expect nothing. So I'm going to live out here on the streets, in the woods, in my tent, minding my business, and hopefully they will leave me alone. And when he told me that, I found that to be so unbelievable that somebody would decide that, but after I thought about it later on, even after this conversation later on, I said, he was still that child, just wanting to be a child. Although he had children of his own, he never really was able to take care of his children because he's always had pressure to take care of his siblings. So, after we had our conversation, and within that conversation, He did was planning to go to I believe it was Christmas dinner at my grandmother's house, and he wanted me and my family to come. But I told him, we had already had plans for the holidays because we always, you know, would switch between my in-laws and my mother's house for Thanksgiving, Christmas. So I believe this year was Christmas at my in-laws. And my father actually got very, very offended and upset about it. And he basically told me that I was coming to dinner at my grandmother's house. No, sir. First of all, I'm grown. Yes, I'm your daughter, but I'm not your child anymore. I'm grown. I have a husband and 2 children of my own. You missed those days to tell me what I am and am not going to do. Now, I said it respectfully because regardless, you're still my parent. And I respect you as my parent, but you are going to respect me as your adult child. My father didn't like that. We ended our conversation, and that was the last time that I talked to my father. Within that next year or a year or two later, because I can't remember if this was 2010 or 2011, but in 2012, I get a phone call from my mother informing me that one of my aunts had got in contact with her to let us know that my father is now deceased. He was killed in it wasn't really a car, it was more of one of those, I can't really remember what they're called, but it's something like a scooter, but one of those large ones that, they flying down the street doing popping wheelies and all that kind of things. He was hit by one of those, him and the young person on that particular vehicle died instantly. So I never got a chance to speak to my father again. That is a regret that I had, that I wish that we were able to speak again. It has always been my wish and my hope that I could have had a father-daughter relationship with him. It is also my wish and hope and prayer, too, that he could have established a relationship with his sons as well. But it wasn't meant to be. So, telling the story of my father once again, can someone choose to be homeless? Yes. Like I said, there's many reasons why people become homeless. There's many reasons why people do the things that they do. And my father's point and decision for becoming homeless was to escape reality. He was tired of being the parent to his siblings, and he felt if I ran away, they will leave me alone. Did they leave him alone? I have no idea. I would hope that he found some peace within himself, within God, while he was chilling in the woods in his tent. So in saying all of that, we just don't know what people are going through. We see people on the streets all the time, and they all have a story. They do. And ever since the situation with my father, when I see people on the street, I just say a prayer for them, because they did not start out being on the street. Something caused them to be on the street, to be in a tent in the woods. Something, somewhere. And if it wasn't for the grace of God, some of us would be in that situation. So I implore you that when you see people who are on the street, who are begging, who are homeless, who look dirty, who may even be drunk or high or prostituting or screaming to the top of their lungs for no reason, say a prayer for them. We don't know what they're going through. We don't know what each other's going through. You see me here talking to you about my father. I could be going through some things too. So keep me in prayer as I keep you in prayer. Okay? I think we just need to just show a little bit more kindness to humanity overall. Okay? So that was just my little story about my father. I don't know. Hopefully this maybe can help somebody else. If you have a family member who is going through something, anything, just try to be there for them as much as you can. And if you've done all that you can do, honey, the only thing you can do is just pray for them and put them in God's hands. Some people want to be helped and some people don't. And if they don't, that's okay too. You've done all that you could do. Okay? So you all going to have a wonderfully blessed day. You know that I want you to keep shining and keep smiling, honey. You know I love you with the love of God. If you like this video and any other of my videos, and if you haven't checked out any of my videos, please check them out as well, okay? And like, share, and subscribe. And I hope to see you again very, very soon. See you later.